Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going deep, really deep into Sannyas Dharma. It's an ancient Indian concept that honestly kind of blew me away when I first started looking into it. And I think our expert here is going to help us unpack all this incredible material on the topic.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff, and it's actually surprisingly relevant to how we live today. The sources you found are a great place to start to understand how these ancient ideas can still work in our modern world.
Right off the bat, this whole idea of complete renunciation, it sounds intense, right? Like that Sanskrit term samyak, it makes you think of, I don't know, monks and hermits and stuff. But looking at what we have here, it seems like there's got to be a deeper meaning, right?
Oh, absolutely. The real heart of Sanya's, it's not just about giving up all your stuff. It's this fundamental change in how you think. It's about letting go of all the temporary things and embracing what's eternal.
Okay, so it's more than just ditching your phone and heading for the Himalayas, but I mean, how do we really understand that difference? We've got these two main types of sanyas in the sources, don't we?
Right. So we've got hadkasanyas, which is what most people think of when they hear renunciation. It's that physical act of leaving everything behind and living a solitary life. Picture the monk in saffron robes meditating in a cave.
Yeah, yeah, classic image. But then there's Sanyas, which sounds a lot more, well, let's say doable for those of us who aren't ready to give up everything just yet.
Exactly. With hadkasanyas, you're working on that mental detachment, but you're still living in the world.
Yeah.
It's that understanding that real renunciation is in your mind. It's not about your external circumstances.
Oh, so like even a CEO running a huge company could be practicing a form of sanyas. It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it shows how deep and profound this philosophy really is.
Yeah.
The Bhagavad Gita, one of the most important texts in Hinduism, has some really interesting things to say about this idea of internal renunciation.
Oh yeah, the Bhagavad Gita. I've always kind of felt intimidated by it. I know I should read it, but I just haven't gotten around to it.
It's definitely a book that you need to really sit with and think about. But even just looking at a few verses, it can really open your eyes. There's this one where Krishna is talking to Arjuna, and he says, "Actions don't bind me because I don't have any desire for the results of my actions."
Okay, so that's going right back to that mental detachment thing, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Krishna isn't saying don't do anything. He's saying that it's that attachment to what's going to happen, wanting the reward or the recognition, that's what keeps us trapped.
So real renunciation is about acting without being driven by your ego or your self-interest.
You got it. And that idea of selfless action, that's what they call karma yoga. And it's a central theme in the Bhagavad Gita. It says we can find liberation not by hiding from the world, but by engaging with it in a selfless way, detached from the outcome.
So how does karma yoga actually play out within the idea of sannyas? Is it about finding that balance between what we need to do in the world and that sense of inner detachment?
That's a great question. And it's something the Bhagavad Gita goes into deeply. Remember, true renunciation isn't about physically running away. It's about doing what you have to do, but doing it without being attached to the results, like you're surrendering those results to something bigger.
That reminds me of something we were talking about earlier, the idea that real sannyasis, they're not all hermits hiding away. I mean, they've played important roles in society, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. The sources point out that sannyasis, even though they've renounced the world, they've often been advisors to kings, spiritual guides, even social reformers.
That's a far cry from that lone meditator in a cave.
Right. And it shows the amazing impact that people who live by these principles can have on everyone around them. One of the sources even uses the example of Adi Shankaracharya, this incredible philosopher and theologian from the 8th century. He traveled all over India, setting up monasteries and bringing together different Hindu schools of thought.
So even though he was a renunciate, he was super involved in shaping the religious and intellectual landscape of his time. That's amazing.
It is. And it underlines that sannyas isn't about rejecting or running away from the world. It's about changing how we relate to the world, getting rid of ego and attachment.
That sounds incredibly difficult, though. How can we, like normal people living normal lives, even begin to approach that kind of detachment?
Well, I think a good place to start is by developing awareness. Pay attention to what you're thinking, what you want, how you react. Notice how often you're caught up in wanting things to be different, or in clinging to things you're afraid of losing.
So it's about recognizing those patterns of attachment that keep us stuck in this cycle of always wanting more and never being satisfied.
Exactly. And as we become more aware of those patterns, we can start to make deliberate choices about how we want to live. We can choose to loosen our grip on the things that aren't serving us anymore and embrace a simpler, more mindful way of being.
So we're taking those ancient Sannyas principles and applying them to our own lives in a way that actually makes sense.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's where it gets really exciting because these principles, even though they're ancient, they're super relevant to the problems we face in the world today.
I can totally see that. I mean, we live in a culture that's all about getting more stuff, constantly striving for more, defining ourselves by what we own and achieve.
Right. And that's where the wisdom of Sannyas can be like a powerful antidote. It asks us to question all of that, to let go of needing validation from outside ourselves, and to find real fulfillment from within.
It's about understanding that true happiness and peace don't come from buying more stuff, but from building a deeper connection with ourselves and with everything around us.
That's it. And that's something we all need to hear right now.
Couldn't agree more. You know, earlier you mentioned that there are some really interesting connections between these ancient Sannyas principles and what modern science is finding. I'm super curious about that. Tell me more.
Okay, so one of the sources talks about how mindfulness, which is super important in Sannyas, is actually being studied by neuroscientists now. Research shows that regular meditation can actually change the structure and function of your brain. It can help you focus better, regulate your emotions, even be more compassionate.
So modern science is proving what ancient yogis already knew.
Exactly. And it's not just mindfulness. There are studies showing that practices like yoga, which come from the sannyasi tradition, can have amazing benefits for your mind and body.
That's incredible. It seems like these ancient practices are more important than ever in our crazy, stressful world.
They really are. And it shows just how timeless this wisdom is. It's been passed down for centuries for a reason.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. We've talked about different types of sannyas, what the Bhagavad Gita says about selfless action and mental detachment, and even how ancient wisdom and modern science are coming together.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's still so much to explore, like practical ways to live a more detached and mindful life, and amazing stories about people who are actually living sannyas in the modern world.
I can't wait to dive into all of that next time. For now, take a minute to think about what we've talked about. What really stood out to you? What questions do you have? Hold on to those thoughts and join us next time as we keep going deeper into Sannyas Dharma.
Welcome back to our deep dive on Sannyas Dharma. I'm really excited to see how we can actually put these ancient principles into practice in our lives today.
Me too. Last time we were talking about developing awareness, things like meditation and yoga, and focusing on gratitude and mindful consumption, all great places to start for sure. But I'm curious, what can we learn from how sannyas is woven into the fabric of Indian culture? Are there specific examples or practices that stand out?
Oh, absolutely. One that comes to mind right away is the concept of aparigraha, which basically means non-possessiveness. It challenges us to rethink how we see material possessions and the whole idea of ownership.
Okay, non-possessiveness. How would someone actually apply that in their everyday life? Honestly, it sounds a little radical.
Yeah, might sound that way at first, but it's really about a subtle shift in how you think about things. Aparigraha encourages us to see ourselves as temporary caretakers of the things we have, not like we actually own them. And this goes beyond just stuff. It applies to relationships and even our own bodies.
So instead of holding on tight, it's more about appreciating things without feeling like you own or control them.
Exactly. And that can look different for everyone. It could be as simple as being willing to lend your things to others. Or maybe it means letting go of the need to control every detail of a project at work. On a deeper level, it's about understanding that everything is temporary, which helps you appreciate the present moment more.
That reminds me of the Buddhist idea of non-attachment. It seems like a lot of spiritual traditions come back to this idea of letting go of what we cling to.
That's a great point. And it's one of the beautiful things about exploring these ancient traditions. They often point to similar truths, different paths, same mountaintop. Real happiness and fulfillment, they don't usually come from outside ourselves.
So embracing aparigraha, this idea of non-possessiveness, could help us loosen our attachment to material things and maybe even find more inner peace.
Exactly. It's not about living in poverty or denying yourself nice things. It's about changing your relationship with them, understanding that your worth and happiness don't depend on them.
It's a powerful message, especially in a society that often says success is all about how much stuff you have. But are there other examples from Indian culture that show how we can integrate sannyas into our daily lives?
For sure. Another one that comes to mind is seva, which means selfless service.
Ah, yes, seva. Giving back to your community, contributing to something bigger than yourself, right?
Right. It's about understanding that we're all connected and using your talents and resources to help others. It doesn't have to be some big time-consuming thing. It can be as simple as helping an elderly neighbor with their groceries or volunteering at a local soup kitchen.
It's interesting how these ancient principles like seva encourage us to focus outward on the needs of others instead of just ourselves. It almost seems counterintuitive.
It might seem that way at first, but there's this beautiful give and take with selfless service. Often the more you give, the more you get back, even if it's not always in the way you expect. It's a principle that's really deeply rooted in Indian culture. Seva is seen as a crucial part of growing spiritually.
You know, it strikes me that in the West, we often think of spirituality as these individual practices, like meditation or prayer. But in India, it seems like community and service are a much bigger part of the spiritual path.
That's a really insightful observation. It might reflect a different understanding of what the self really is. A lot of Eastern traditions see the self as interconnected with all beings, while the West often emphasizes individuality.
So it's less about withdrawing from the world and more about engaging with it in a compassionate and selfless way.
Exactly. And in a world that's often full of division and conflict, this message of interconnectedness and selfless service is more important than ever. But aparigraha and seva, those are just two pieces of the puzzle. Indian culture is full of wisdom about how to make sannyas a part of everyday life.
Tell me more. What else can we learn from this ancient tradition?
Another important principle, one that's really ingrained in Indian society, is the respect for elders and teachers.
Oh.
There's a deep reverence for those who came before us, who have wisdom and knowledge from their experiences.
I saw that firsthand when I was traveling in India. The respect they show towards older generations is really amazing.
It's a core part of the culture. And it's not just about age. It's about recognizing the value of experience and learning from those who have already walked the path.
So how can we, living in the modern Western world, apply this principle in a way that feels genuine? Do we all need to find a guru and start bowing down?
Not necessarily. It's more about developing an attitude of humility and being open to learning. It's about being willing to listen to the wisdom of others, even if it challenges what you believe. We all have teachers in our lives, whether they have official titles or not, people who guide us, mentor us, or just help us see things differently.
It's about recognizing that we don't know everything and that there's always more to learn, no matter how old or experienced we are.
Exactly. And that's a key part of sannyas, understanding that we're all on this journey of growth and evolution.
So we've explored these three beautiful principles from Indian culture: aparigraha, non-possessiveness, seva, selfless service, and this deep respect for elders and teachers. They offer such valuable lessons, anyone can apply them, no matter their background or beliefs.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that sannyas isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. It's a journey of self-discovery, and everyone will find their own way of expressing these principles.
It's not about following a rigid set of rules, it's about finding what resonates with you, what helps you live a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
You said it perfectly. And it's a lifelong process, a constant exploration with so many opportunities to learn and grow.
So for our listeners who are feeling inspired and want to start their own sannyas journey, what advice would you give them? Where's a good place to begin?
Start with an open mind and be willing to try new things. Experiment with different practices, explore various teachings, and see what feels right for you. There's no one right way. It's about discovering what works best for you, what helps you find inner peace and fulfillment.
That's great advice. It's a good reminder that sannyas isn't just about giving things up. It's about embracing a whole new way of being, a new way of relating to the world.
Exactly. It's about cultivating qualities like compassion, gratitude, and non-attachment. It's about understanding that true happiness comes from within, not from external things.
This has been so insightful. We've explored practical ways to apply sannyas, drawing inspiration from Indian culture and highlighting those key principles: non-possessiveness, selfless service, and respect for elders and teachers. And we've emphasized that this is a personal journey of self-discovery, not a one-size-fits-all prescription.
And it's important to acknowledge that this journey can be tough sometimes. It asks us to face our egos, our attachments, and the things we believe that hold us back. But it's an incredibly rewarding journey that can lead to more peace, happiness, and fulfillment.
That's a beautiful reminder. For our listeners who are feeling inspired but maybe a little intimidated, just remember to take it one step at a time. Start small, be patient with yourself, and trust the process.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to reach out for guidance and support from others who are on a similar path. There's a whole community of people out there exploring these ancient wisdom traditions and finding new ways to apply them to modern life.
Well said. I'm excited to go even deeper into the practical side of sanyas in our next and final segment.
Me too. We'll be talking about specific tools and techniques that you can use to live a more detached and mindful life.
And we'll be talking about some of the challenges you might face along the way and give practical advice on how to overcome them.
We'll also share inspiring stories of people who have made sannyas a part of their modern lives, showing that it's not just some abstract concept, but a real way of life that can bring more peace, purpose, and fulfillment.
So make sure to join us for the final part of our deep dive into Sanya's Dharma. We'll be wrapping things up and offering some final thoughts and reflections on this fascinating and transformative topic. See you soon. Welcome back to our final deep dive into Sanya's Dharma. We've covered so much, from the philosophy to practical applications from Indian culture. Now, I'm really excited to unpack some of those tools and techniques you mentioned for actually living a more detached and mindful life.
Yeah, for sure. It's easy to talk about these ideas,
Yeah.
but how do we actually make them work in our everyday lives?
Right, exactly. So what practical tools can we actually use to bring these ancient principles into our modern world?
Well, I think mindfulness is a really powerful one. It's about being super aware of each moment, seeing your thoughts and feelings without getting swept away by them.
You mentioned this before, like creating space between yourself and your reactions. It's like hitting pause before you just react automatically. But how do we actually do that?
Meditation is a really great tool for that. Even just a few minutes each day can make a huge difference. It helps you train your mind to be more focused and less reactive.
For someone who's totally new to meditation, what tips would you
Oh,
give?
sure. Don't overthink it. Find a quiet place, sit comfortably, and just focus on your breath. Thoughts are going to come and go. That's normal. Just gently bring your attention back to your breath. There are also lots of guided meditations online and apps that could be really helpful when you're starting out.
Okay, so mindfulness and meditation are key. What else can we add?
Journaling is another powerful one. When you take the time to write down your thoughts and feelings, it can help you process them better and see your patterns. It's like having a conversation with yourself on paper. It can help you untangle all those complicated emotions and see things more clearly.
I've always found journaling really helpful for dealing with tough emotions or working through difficult situations. There's something about writing it down that helps you step back and see things more objectively.
Exactly. It's like you're outside yourself looking in. You can observe your thoughts and feelings from a more detached place. That can be so helpful for finding balance, especially when things are tough.
Okay, so mindfulness, meditation, journaling. What else can we add to our sannyasi toolkit?
Something that's often overlooked but really powerful is spending time in nature. Connecting with the natural world can be so grounding. It helps you come back to the present moment. It's a great antidote to all the noise and busyness of our lives.
Totally agree. I always feel so much calmer when I'm in nature. It's like all the mental noise just fades away and I can finally breathe and connect with something bigger.
Exactly. Nature reminds us that we're part of something so much greater than ourselves. It helps us tap into a sense of awe and wonder. And that can shift our whole perspective. We can let go of the little things that we get so caught up in.
Okay, so we've got mindfulness, meditation, journaling, connecting with nature. That's a great start. But I imagine there are challenges too, right? Like embracing a more detached and mindful life, it can't always be easy.
Oh, of course not. It's not always easy to let go of those attachments and live a simpler, more mindful life. We live in a world that's constantly telling us to want more, do more, be more. It takes real effort to resist that and choose a different path.
It's true. We're constantly bombarded with messages saying our worth depends on what we have, what we achieve, how we look. It's easy to get caught up in all of that.
Absolutely. One of the biggest challenges is our own internal resistance. We might have these deep-seated beliefs about what it means to be successful, happy, fulfilled. And those beliefs can be hard to question and even harder to let go of.
So how do we deal with that resistance when it comes up?
Well, I think the most important thing is to be kind to yourself. We're not going to be perfect at this. There will be days when you feel attached or greedy or envious or frustrated, and that's okay. The key is to notice those feelings without judgment and just gently bring your attention back to the present moment.
Like learning a new language, it takes time and practice to get fluent.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a destination. Another challenge is dealing with what other people expect of you.
Right. Your family, friends, colleagues, they might not understand why you want to simplify your life or let go of certain things. They might even see it as rejecting them or their values.
Exactly. And that can be tough, especially if you feel pressure to fit in or you're afraid of disappointing them. I think the key is to be clear about your own values, what's important to you, and to communicate that to others in a way that's authentic and respectful.
So it's about setting boundaries and being true to yourself,
No.
even if it means having tough conversations or making hard choices.
Exactly. It's about honoring your own unique path and living in a way that feels right for you.
You mentioned earlier that you had some inspiring stories about people who are living sanyas in their modern lives. I'd love to hear how people are actually putting these principles into practice.
Yeah, me too. It's helpful to see real life examples, to see how these ancient principles can actually work in the real world. One person who comes to mind is this woman I know who left her high-powered corporate job to start a nonprofit. It helps underprivileged children get education and support.
Wow, that's a big change. What made her make such a dramatic shift?
She had achieved a lot of success in the eyes of the world, but she realized that her job, even though it paid well, wasn't really fulfilling her. She felt this calling to use her skills and resources to make a positive impact.
So she basically renounced her attachment to material success and status to live a more meaningful life with a purpose.
Yeah, exactly. And she lives a much simpler life now, but she's happier and more fulfilled than ever.
That's so inspiring. It shows that sannyas isn't just for monks and ascetics, it's a way of life that anyone can choose if they're looking for more meaning and purpose.
Absolutely. And there are so many other examples of people integrating these principles into their lives. Some people downsize their homes and live more sustainably. Others spend their time volunteering or being activists or doing creative things that feed their soul. There's no one right way.
It's about finding what feels right for you, what helps you live a life that aligns with your values.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about Sanya's. It's a path that's open to everyone, no matter who you are, what you believe, or where you come from.
Well, I think we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We've explored the meaning of sannyas, its roots in Indian culture, the perspective of the Bhagavad Gita, and we've busted some myths. We've also talked about practical tools and techniques for living a more detached and mindful life, and we've shared inspiring stories of people who are actually living these principles.
It's been a great exploration, and I've really enjoyed sharing these insights with you and our listeners.
Me too. As we wrap up, is there a final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that Sannyas is not about deprivation, like giving things up and being miserable. It's about freedom. It's about freeing yourself from the things that keep you stuck in suffering. It's about choosing a life that's full of meaning, purpose, and joy.
Beautifully said. To our listeners, take some time to think about what really resonated with you during this deep dive, what sparked your curiosity, what practices align with your values, and how can you, even in small ways, bring some of these Sannyas principles into your own life. It's a journey worth taking, a journey that can lead to a richer, more fulfilling life. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.